Today, we're going to talk about turnarounds, difficult work environments that need to be changed. One of the biggest mistakes leaders make is waiting way too long to either admit or address that something isn't working. Businesses usually don't collapse overnight. The warning signs are there long before the crisis shows up financially. The question is, are you willing to see them and are you willing to do something about it? I'll give you an example of a turnaround that I've been a part of that will give some examples in terms of really sometimes how easy it is to turn something around if you're just paying attention or you know what to do. And even if you don't, you can figure it out if you just pay attention to the small things that are going on. So I went into an environment that had been missing goals for a number of years. And they had a period coming up, a sales period that just had about 6 weeks to make. And when I stepped in, the very first thing I did was really assess what's going on. So paying attention and listening to the people that have been there. Don't assume that you know anything. Just really go in inquisitive and trying to understand what's happening. We cannot fix anything if we don't know what's going on. When I went in, I spent a few days sitting with each person individually, asking about their job, asking about what they do, how they do it, and really just getting an opinion. What do you think has been the challenge here? And what are your ideas about fixing that? So I really just tried to understand what is happening every day, kind of as a fly on the wall, not giving an opinion, not trying to change anything, just going in and listening. And I'll share the timeline because if I say 6 weeks, and then the first week was a listen week, and then I'd say week 2, taking time to put all of that together and understanding what might be the cause. And once I identified what that was, I put together a presentation and I got the team together and I said, here are the changes that I feel we need to make to be able to succeed in 6 weeks. And I had a lot of response to that. I had both positive and negative. I think that can be expected in a turnaround. People in general tend to be very comfortable in the way that they're doing things, and understandably so. That's their everyday and what they're used to. And so when a new person comes in, especially when there's a sense of urgency to make a change by the company, they there's you could expect some pushback most of the time. I think, listening is one of the steps in the first week. Listening and trying to understand is one of the steps to start building some relationship there. And you'll have a mixed bag. There'll be some people that are excited about what you're doing, that they want change, and then others that don't want to have any change at all. What I have found is a lot of times it it can be both. There's people that are great employees that don't want change just because they're not comfortable with change, but there's also people that are part of the problem that don't want change. And so I think it's important to also identify the differences and manage that accordingly. But the second week we made changes, and then by the third week, that's when you sort of get both. You get the excitement, you also get the fallout, but you have to stay in it and continue to show people and communicate why this is good. And when there are wins, share the wins and demonstrate that we're all on the same page. We're all working together towards the same goal. And you do eventually get there. And in that scenario, by the time the 6th week had arrived, we had made the goal for the first time in years for that business unit. So it is possible to make a very fast change. Slower changes, if you have the ability to do that, are easier. You have more time to get people on board. But at the same time, I think there's an argument to be made of not going too slow, because sometimes when you go too slow, that gives too much time for people to fester on something or come up with other ideas that maybe are not good ideas. I've seen that happen too. And again, you want to hear what people have to say, and that's part of succeeding. I mean, the people that have been in there, especially your really good employees, the ones that have been around, they know a lot of what's going on or have really good recommendations. So you do want to listen to the people there, but there are some people that may not be the case. So first, we have to consider a number of factors to determine if an environment's even capable of being turned around. A few of these include: is it a temporary situation? Is the market changing? Are we solving the right problems? Is the market flooded with new competitors and we've lost too much market share? Is it a internal problem? Is it an attitude or culture problem in the company? I think there has to be an assessment at the very beginning, which is in the story I mentioned is sort of the first week was determining, is it even possible to make the change? Assuming that it can be saved, here are a number of areas I have found really stand out as as the issue of why the company might be declining. Not really watching numbers, sales or financials. I find that there are companies that just kind of go day to day, and maybe they've been successful in the past, and then the market got more challenging and more competition came in, or just, the market in general just has some sort of change. And they're used to doing something a certain way and just stuck in the mode of doing that and not paying attention and not really running numbers and conversions and metrics and looking at how are people actually performing. I think that is frequently an issue. Lack of effective operations, systems not working, lack of efficiency, that's another really big one. Sometimes it's just that. It's just simply that. One hand doesn't know what the other hand is doing. There just needs to be some better operations put in place. Employees don't agree with the values of the company. Departments are not on the same page. This is also an issue sometimes that people sometimes will not leave a job even if they're not happy in the job, even if they don't agree with the company because it's comfortable. And they may even feel like it's the devil, it in a way. Um, they are just comfortable and don't wanna move. They don't wanna take the time to do that, but then they're in there and they're not happy, so they're bringing a negativity to the workplace. Um, and then again, like I said, they don't agree with the values of the company or where the company's headed, and they push back, and sometimes that creates a problem within teams. In fact, I'd say that always creates a problem in teams. So many times it could even just be the attitude. There's just an attitude among the team where the people that do have good ideas can't make change. And so you get stuck in this cycle of just having the same problems. Trying and not getting anywhere, that's another issue sometimes. Maybe there's just a lack of expertise that's among the group and everybody's trying really hard. You're just not figuring it out. Sometimes you just need a little outside help. Lack of engagement from the staff, no accountability, no interest, no loyalty to the job. That ties back into the comment I made earlier about the culture a little bit and just people in the job to keep the job because they need a job and not because it's the right job for them. So, no accountability. I've seen that staff just kinda does what they want and nobody's sitting down at the end of the week, "How'd the week go?" "How'd we perform this week?" There's accountability is not a bad word. Accountability makes us better, and especially if it's done the right way. So, I have seen that too, that there's a lack of accountability, and so because there's a lack of accountability, people don't even know how good they're doing or how bad they're doing. Nobody knows. Ignores problems, just ignores the problem. There's a problem, "Oh, it'll fix itself. It'll fix itself. It'll work it out," and just kinda sweep it under the rug. That can't happen. The large majority of the time, the problem's not going to go away. I would say one of the biggest reasons that I see there's a need for a turnaround, and always a major reason in an environment where a turnaround can happen, this would be excluding situations where maybe that's not possible, but in situations that it is possible, it's usually a leadership issue. And it doesn't always mean that it's a bad leader. It just may mean that it's a leader that doesn't know how to fix it or and in that situation, that might be why you're there, is the leader recognizes that, and it's a good leader that says, "I need help." And so that sometimes is the scenario. Other times, it's a leader that's just not fit for the job, and again, that doesn't mean that they're a bad person or not working hard. It means sometimes it's none of that. Sometimes it is that they're not working hard, but sometimes it's not that at all. It's just that they're in the wrong seat. So I think many times I also find that they're in the wrong seat because they avoid conflict, they avoid having tough discussions, I have seen that to be the case very often, that many times the reason that the team's not doing well is because there is something going on in the team or a problem, and, the leader's not addressing it. I've seen that a lot, that there's been a problem team member, somebody that's sort of taken control of the group that should not be in charge, and that leader is just not strong enough to be able to counteract that. So I think that's just in general a number of things that I have found in environments that need turned around. And again, that's not comprehensive of everything, but that is sort of sometimes what you'll find in that. So the next question, of course, is how do we fix it? How do we fix a situation? And talked through that a little bit, but what are some real tangible ideas outside of what we already talked about that we can do? So just to sort of recap, we can assess reality quickly. In my experience, literally the first week, or other times it's taken a few months. But in general, you can assess a situation really quickly if you stop and interview people and listen to what's going on. Identify bottlenecks and simplifying operations, getting the right people in the right roles. You won't make everyone happy, and some people will be mad and push back. We've talked about that. Communicating clearly during uncertainty and building trust. So I've saved this one sort of for the end, that when you communicate clearly what's going on and you are honest with people, and even if it means you have to say, I can't talk about that. I would like to answer that for you, but at this time it's not something that I'm capable of answering or sharing. Most of the time, teams appreciate that. They appreciate the honesty of, I just can't talk about it right now. That is always preferred over trying to just make up some kind of answer. Nobody wants that, and it is best to just be honest with the team on what's going on. The clarity of communication goes back to also being comfortable doing it, and being a leader and a manager that is okay with pushback, and is okay with needing to explain things. If you're a good leader, you're going to explain a lot of why you're doing what you're doing and how it's going to benefit the team. But I think in general, you have to be okay with, some people are not gonna like you, they're not gonna be happy with what you're doing. They're really upset, and many times it has nothing to do with you. It's more about what they want and what they're used to and what they're comfortable with, and that's part of being in a turnaround, is just knowing that and sometimes there's even some hostility towards you about what you're doing, because people can be very comfortable in where they are and the jobs that they have, and sometimes it's way out of line, and sometimes it's understandable. It's understandable. When there's change, especially if it's a person that doesn't like change or isn't used to it, it's hard to change. It's very stressful. And trying to just be as open and communicative and supportive and clear and understanding is the best thing we can do. And because the goal in the end for all of us is to have a successful company that keeps people employed and keeps the company moving. So the job of going in and doing a turnaround, the job of that person, that leader, is super important, because everybody there is relying on you to make that happen. So building trust is part of that. Building trust, communicating accurately, being honest, doing what you say you're going to do, especially in a turnaround. People need to know that they can trust you. They can trust what you're saying, because a lot of times they're probably even scared of their job or what's happening. So honesty brings that to the table. Honesty, honesty brings comfort to the table. In closing, I'd say the strongest leaders are not the ones who never face problems. They are the ones willing to see really clearly, adapt quickly, and make difficult decisions before small problems become catastrophic ones.